Ladies and gentlemen, I want to teach today not just to inspire, but to equip you with understanding. Because when you understand the signs of divine favor, you no longer compare yourself with others. You begin to walk with clarity, confidence, and conviction. We are not here to chase blessings. We are here to recognize when heaven has already marked us. There is a kind of woman who is not just visited by God, but chosen by Him for something greater than comfort, for something beyond culture. She is favored, and that favor is not always loud, it is not always flashy, but it is divine. You know you're favored by God when your dreams seem too big for where you come from. This is not a coincidence, and it's certainly not a delusion. It's a sign. God has a pattern, and that pattern is consistent throughout Scripture. He chooses people whose background doesn't seem to qualify them for the magnitude of the vision they carry. This is especially true for women who are chosen by God. The dreams you carry often clash with the reality you live in. You may be born into a place of obscurity, lack, or dysfunction, yet there's something in your spirit that knows you're called to build, to lead, to birth something that has never been seen before. That tension between where you are and what you see in your spirit is not a curse, it's confirmation. Look at Mary, a teenage girl from Nazareth, a city that was not known for greatness. The angel didn't show up in Jerusalem, the religious capital. He didn't choose a woman from a royal family or a priestly lineage. He came to a girl engaged to a carpenter in a small, unimpressive town. Why? Because favor is not attracted to status. It is attracted to posture. Mary's heart was open, humble, and willing, and that's what God needed to bring heaven's plan into the earth. Her vision was bigger than her background. She was about to carry the Son of God, the King of Kings, yet nothing about her surroundings reflected royalty. That's how divine favor operates. When you are a woman favored by God, your dreams will often intimidate the people around you. People may even try to talk you out of what God has placed in your heart, not because they're evil, but because they can't reconcile your origins with your assignment. Your environment may say you're ordinary, but your spirit knows you're extraordinary. You may be surrounded by average, but your soul burns with something greater. And that is because favor gives you access to heaven's blueprint, even when earth hasn't caught up yet. God gives favored women visions that don't fit in their current context. You begin to think in dimensions that your resources can't yet support. You have ideas that are ahead of your income. You feel pulled to do things no one in your family has done. You sense a calling that can't be traced to your upbringing. That's because God is not working with your history, He is working with your destiny. And when you are favored, He begins to reveal your end from the beginning. He gives you glimpses of the outcome before the journey even begins. It's like being pregnant with purpose, but not yet having the infrastructure to support it. And still, He trusts you with the vision. Some women try to shrink their dreams to match their reality, but a woman favored by God does the opposite. She stretches her faith to match the vision. She doesn't apologize for dreaming big, because she understands that it's not ambition, it's obedience. She's not arrogant, she's aware that God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called. And if He placed it in her, He will provide everything necessary to bring it to pass. This is why favored women must be careful who they share their vision with. Not everyone can handle what God has shown you. People will question you not because you're wrong, but because your vision challenges their comfort zone. When your dream exceeds your background, it often exposes the limits of other people's faith. But God didn't give them the vision, He gave it to you. You don't need everyone to understand. You need to be faithful with what you've been entrusted. You attract warfare without provocation when you are a woman favored by God. The battle often begins not because of anything you've done, but because of what you carry. Spiritual warfare is not always a response to your mistakes. Sometimes it's a reaction to your assignment. There is something about a woman who is carrying destiny that stirs up resistance in the unseen realm. You may be quiet, minding your business, staying faithful in what seems like a small space, yet storms arise. People begin to misunderstand you, opportunities seem to resist you, doors take longer to open, but what most people call coincidence or misfortune is often the pressure that accompanies favor. Favor does not exempt you from conflict. In many ways, it invites it. Because favor is evidence that you've been chosen to fulfill a divine purpose, and that purpose makes you a threat. You're not a threat because of your personality. You're a threat because of your potential. The enemy doesn't fight who you are now, he fights who you're becoming. That's why the attacks often feel disproportionate to your current position. It's because they're not aimed at where you are, but at what's ahead of you. This is why favored women often face warfare that feels personal, even when they haven't done anything to provoke it. The opposition is spiritual, not circumstantial. Think of Esther, a Jewish girl chosen to be queen in a foreign empire. Her elevation seemed sudden, but the pressure that followed was intense. She had to intercede for her entire nation under the threat of death. Her favor didn't just give her a crown, it gave her a cross to carry. And before she ever opened her mouth to speak to the king, there was already a plot to destroy her people. The warfare didn't wait until she took action. It began as soon as she was positioned, because in the realm of the spirit, placement is power. And when you've been placed by God, even your presence disturbs darkness. This is why you cannot define favor by how easy your life is. If ease was the evidence of favor, most of the women in Scripture would be disqualified. Mary was favored, yet she risked her reputation, her relationships, and her future by saying yes to God. Hannah was favored, but she wept in the temple before her breakthrough. Deborah was favored, but she had to go to war. Favor doesn't always come with comfort. Sometimes it comes with conflict, because favor attracts responsibility, and responsibility draws resistance. And when you are a woman of favor, you have to understand the weight of what you carry. There are seasons in your life where you will be misunderstood, opposed, and even attacked for reasons you can't explain. That's because you are not just walking in blessing, you are walking in a divine assignment. And every assignment has opposition attached to it, but the opposition is often a sign that you're in the right place. Hell doesn't fight what doesn't threaten it. So when you start seeing unexpected resistance, strange tension, or doors that seem harder to open than they should be, don't automatically assume something is wrong. Begin to discern. Begin to ask God what you're carrying that the enemy is trying to stop. This is also why emotional maturity is critical for favored women. You cannot take everything personally. You cannot respond to every attack emotionally. Because when you are under attack, you are also under assignment. If you allow the warfare to distract you, it can delay your purpose. But if you interpret the warfare correctly, it becomes confirmation. The more intense the battle, the more significant the breakthrough on the other side. This is why the favored woman must also be a praying woman, because prayer aligns her focus. It reminds her that her battle is not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual forces that recognize her favor before she even fully walks in it. You thrive in unusual places when you are a woman favored by God. Favor has a way of defying logic and expectations. It is not confined by geography, social class, education, or circumstance. In fact, God often demonstrates His favor by allowing it to flourish in the least likely environments. It's in the unfamiliar, the uncomfortable, and the unconventional spaces that the favor of God becomes undeniable. This is a principle that repeats itself in the lives of women throughout Scripture. Those who were taken from ordinary or even difficult conditions and elevated in ways that made it clear that only God could have orchestrated it. When a woman is favored by God, her surroundings may not reflect her future, but they do not limit her. She may be placed in a setting that seems barren, foreign, or beneath her potential, and yet she prospers. She finds peace where others feel pressure. She produces fruit where others only find frustration. This is not due to her skill or charm alone. It is because favor makes the soil respond to her presence. Just as Joseph prospered in a prison cell and Daniel found favor in exile, so too does the favored woman thrive in situations that were never designed to support her growth. because God is not limited by environment, and neither is his favor. Take Ruth, for example, a Moabite widow in a foreign land, grieving and unfamiliar with the customs of Israel, yet something in her heart aligned with divine timing. She wasn't from Bethlehem. She wasn't from the lineage of promise. She was an outsider, yet she was divinely placed. She found herself gleaning in the fields of boughs, not by accident, but by providence. And though she was working in a place of lack, doing what was considered the lowliest of tasks, favor elevated her. She was noticed. She was protected. She was blessed. Her location said poverty, but her presence carried promise. Thriving in unusual places is a mark of divine favor because it reveals that God is the source, not the system. The system may say you need credentials, connections, or conformity. But when God favors you, he bypasses protocol. You don't need to manipulate your way into opportunity. You don't need to beg for recognition. The system doesn't have to make room for you, because favor makes room where there was no room before. It's not about fitting into the mold. It's about being molded by God to fit into a divine moment, and when that happens, even strange places become sacred ground. The favored woman recognizes that her location does not determine her limitation. She knows that the wilderness can still be a place of preparation. She knows that the back of the line is not a denial, it's a setup for divine positioning. She understands that comfort is not a prerequisite for calling, so she doesn't complain when the space feels unfamiliar or the season feels dry. She leans into God even more. She draws strength from a deeper well. And as a result, she begins to bloom in places where others wither. People look at her life and say, "How are you doing so well here?" And the answer is not strategy, it's favor. This is why favored women often don't look like where they've been. They carry themselves with grace that doesn't match their past. They speak with wisdom that their resume can't explain. They bring excellence into environments that never nurtured them. That's the power of divine favor. It gives you stability in shaky places. It gives you growth in dry seasons. It gives you recognition in rooms where your name was never mentioned before. And all of this happens not because the place was ideal, but because God's hand was on you in the midst of it. You are drawn to purpose, not popularity, when you are a woman favored by God. Something inside of you refuses to settle for the surface. There is a longing, a quiet but persistent pull towards something deeper, something meaningful. You may not always have the words for it, but your spirit knows you weren't born just to be seen, admired, or accepted. You were born to fulfill a divine assignment. That desire for purpose will often separate you from the crowd. It will create a distance between you and those who are content with shallow living, because when God places his favor on your life, he also places a weight of responsibility on your heart. The favored woman is not moved by applause, nor is she seduced by the spotlight. She may be recognized, but recognition is never her goal. She may be celebrated, but celebration is never her fuel. What drives her is obedience. What anchors her is conviction. She is not concerned with blending in. She is concerned with being aligned, with heaven, with truth, with timing. While others chase platforms, she chases presence. While others are busy trying to be relevant, she is focused on being righteous. She knows that popularity is fleeting, but purpose is eternal. Hannah is an example of this kind of woman. In a society where a woman's worth was often measured by her ability to bear children, Hannah was barren and ridiculed. But she did not retaliate with bitterness. She did not chase status or fight a rival. She went to the temple, she prayed, she poured out her soul before God. Her desire was not just to have a child for her own validation. She wanted to give that child back to God. That is the essence of a woman driven by purpose. She doesn't just want a blessing for herself. She wants to be a vessel for something greater. Purpose will often isolate you before it elevates you. The favored woman may find herself in seasons where she feels overlooked or misunderstood. She may walk through times when her values clash with the culture around her, but she remains steady because her identity is not shaped by trends. It is shaped by truth. She understands that her choices today are laying the foundation for the future God has called her to build. And while others may be tempted to compromise for acceptance, she chooses alignment with her assignment. There is a kind of clarity that comes with being purpose-driven. You start to see through distractions. You recognize when something looks good but isn't good for your calling. You become more intentional with your time, your relationships, your voice. Purpose becomes your compass. It influences how you dress, how you speak, how you carry yourself, not out of pressure to perform, but out of awareness that you represent something greater than yourself. You represent the kingdom of God on earth. When you are favored, your sense of purpose awakens early, even if your platform comes later. You begin to feel restless in circles where no one is growing. You lose interest in conversations that only revolve around status, appearance, or material things. You crave wisdom, you seek instruction, you value correction, because you are not trying to impress anyone. You are trying to fulfill the reason God placed you on this earth. That inner drive for purpose becomes a form of protection. It shields you from settling for less than what God intended. It keeps you from forming alliances with people who would derail your destiny. It gives you the courage to say no to what everyone else is saying yes to. And while you may not always be the most liked, you will always be the most aligned. Because purpose doesn't always look attractive in the beginning, but it always produces fruit in the end. You inspire without intending to when you are a woman favored by God. This kind of influence is different from the influence that comes from striving or manipulation. It's not something you earn by your efforts or your popularity. Instead, it is a natural byproduct of the favor resting on your life. People are drawn to you because of the light that shines from within, a light that comes from God's presence and purpose in your life. You may not realize it, but your words, your actions, your attitude, and even your very existence speak louder than any speech or explanation. This kind of inspiration is often invisible to the woman who carries it. She may go about her daily life, quietly serving, working, and growing, unaware that others are watching her closely. Sometimes she's not even trying to be a leader, she simply is one because favor makes her life a living testimony. Just as Deborah was called a mother in Israel, because of the leadership and courage she displayed, a woman favored by God naturally becomes a model and a mentor, even if she never set out to be one. Her life becomes a pattern others want to follow, a standard that challenges complacency and a source of hope for those who feel stuck. The power of unintentional inspiration lies in authenticity. People sense when you're being real. They can tell when your confidence is not based on pride, but on the assurance that God is with you. They notice when your joy doesn't depend on circumstances, but on a deeper peace. They observe how you handle pressure, how you treat others, how you respond to setbacks. This transparency becomes magnetic. It says without words, you can overcome, you can thrive, you are not alone. When favor rests on a woman, it is not just her achievements that inspire, it is her character, her faith, and her resilience. Many women underestimate the impact of their daily choices. They think that only big moments matter. But favor works in the small, consistent acts of faithfulness. The way you speak to your family, the way you handle your work, the way you keep your integrity in difficult situations, these are the things that inspire others to believe in their own potential. It is often said that leaders create leaders, and favored women become leaders simply by walking in the favor God has placed on them. They awaken the dormant greatness in others without even trying. This inspiration also brings responsibility. Because when people look to you as a model, they expect consistency. They watch for your words to match your actions. They listen for your voice when they need guidance. And while this can feel heavy at times, it is also a privilege. Being favored means God has given you a platform, whether public or private, to impact lives. You don't have to be perfect, but you do have to be authentic and intentional about stewarding the influence you've been given. When you are a woman favored by God, your life becomes a message even when you don't speak. Your presence in a room changes the atmosphere, your encouragement shifts mindsets, your faith ignites hope, and your perseverance challenges others to keep going. This kind of inspiration is not about you. It's about what God is doing through you. It is a sign that you are walking in alignment with your divine assignment, and that your life matters far beyond what you can see. Many women miss this because they underestimate the power of their everyday impact. They look for validation in grand gestures or public recognition, but favor often works quietly and steadily. The woman favored by God may not always be in the spotlight, but her light cannot be hidden. Like a city on a hill, her life shines as a beacon for those searching for direction, hope, and courage. And this is one of the greatest signs that you are truly favored. When others find strength and inspiration in your journey, even when you're just being yourself. You walk in peace amid chaos when you are a woman favored by God. This peace is not dependent on circumstances, nor is it a fleeting feeling that comes and goes with good news or the absence of problems. It is a deep, unshakable calm that lives in your spirit because of the favor God has placed on your life. It is a supernatural peace that defies explanation, but provides strength, clarity, and resilience when everything around you seems to be falling apart. Favor does not mean a life free from trials. In fact, sometimes the opposite is true. The storms may rage, but the favored woman is not tossed like a leaf in the wind. Instead, she stands firm like a tree with deep roots. That peace is the evidence of a covenant between her and God, a promise that He will never leave nor forsake her. It's the peace Jesus spoke about when He said, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you." This peace is a gift that guards her heart and mind, and it enables her to navigate challenges with wisdom and grace. When chaos surrounds her, she does not panic or give in to fear. Instead, she prays, seeks God's guidance, and trusts His timing. This peace is a sign of divine favor because it shows that her trust is in something greater than the visible troubles. While others may be overwhelmed, she remains composed, knowing that God is working behind the scenes even when she cannot see it. This perspective shifts her response from anxiety to assurance. She becomes a source of calm for others, a light in the darkness, and a refuge in the storm. Consider the story of Anna, the prophetess. She lived in the temple, serving God faithfully, even though she was advanced in years and had experienced loneliness. Yet she was peaceful and hopeful. She understood that God's timing was perfect. Her favor was reflected in her unwavering peace, which sustained her through decades of waiting. When the moment came, she was ready to recognize and rejoice in the fulfillment of God's promise. That kind of peace comes from knowing your season is in God's hands. This peace also helps favored women avoid unnecessary conflict. When provoked or misunderstood, they choose to respond with grace instead of reacting impulsively. They don't allow their emotions to dictate their decisions because they are anchored in the assurance of God's favor. This doesn't mean they are passive or complacent. Rather, they are strategic and wise. They understand that sometimes the best way to win a battle is to remain calm and let God fight on their behalf. Walking in peace amid chaos is also a form of testimony. People notice when you remain steady while others are crumbling. It raises questions and opens doors for conversations about faith and hope. The peace of a favored woman becomes a silent sermon, pointing others to the source of her strength. It shows that favor is not just about blessings and breakthroughs, but also about an inner transformation that sustains you through every season. This peace transforms the favored woman's perspective on problems. Instead of seeing obstacles as roadblocks, she sees them as opportunities for God to show up and demonstrate His power. Her peace fuels her faith and perseverance. It prevents discouragement and keeps her focused on the promises ahead. Even in the darkest moments, she holds on to hope because she knows favor is a sign of God's ongoing work in her life. The peace of favor is not earned by human effort, but is a supernatural gift. It comes from a relationship with God, cultivated through prayer, obedience, and trust. The favored woman prioritizes her spiritual life, knowing that this peace will sustain her through challenges that would overwhelm others. It is the quiet confidence that says, "I may not understand now, but I trust the one who holds my future." This peace is a powerful sign that you are favored because it reveals that you are living beyond the natural. You are connected to the divine source of strength, hope, and endurance. It is a peace that calms your heart, steadies your steps, and prepares you for the purpose God has assigned. And in a world full of uncertainty and turmoil, that peace sets you apart as a woman who is truly blessed and favored by God. When you recognize these signs, the dreams that exceed your beginnings, the battles that come unprovoked, the ability to thrive in unlikely places, the unwavering pursuit of purpose over popularity, the power to inspire without effort, and the peace that anchors you amid chaos, you begin to understand what it truly means to be a woman favored by God. Favor is not just a moment or a blessing. It is a divine atmosphere surrounding your life, calling you higher, strengthening you through opposition, and positioning you for greatness beyond what you can imagine. Embrace these signs with faith and confidence, knowing that your journey is uniquely crafted by a loving God who is preparing you for a legacy that will impact generations. You are not just favored, you are chosen, equipped, and destined to shine.